Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I'm Brian Keith, and today we're talking about how to go from a dream to eight figures. That's $10 million in revenue or more in annual sales. A lot of us start a business and we have some kind of dream around, I'm going to take it to here, I'm going to take it to there. But there's only a tiny number of us who really get it beyond a very fancy, self-employed, you bought yourself a job kind of reality. We're talking today to Bryan Clayton, who took Peachtree from a dream to 10 million in revenue before selling it off, then starting his second company, GreenPal, that is also in the lawn care space. We're going to hear today about going from dream to eight figures in revenue. Bryan, welcome to Redbeard Radio.
Hey, Brian, great to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
It's wonderful to have you here. I'm so excited because you are a practitioner. It's nice to listen to people who are theorizing about how to do something, but you're looking in your rearview mirror as you look at how to get to eight figures. You're also looking in your forward view mirror. You're looking out the windshield. Let's keep the metaphor straight.
There you go.
As you look at your current firm and using what worked last time to do it again. So let's start off with the beginning of Peachtree. When you started that company, well, first off, what year was it? And were you already aimed at 10 million in revenue when you started it?
Yeah, so to your point, my first company was a landscaping business. I started mowing grass in high school as a way to make extra cash. And it was like maybe around year 4 or 5 that I started to realize that this could be the thing that helps me level up in life. This could be the vehicle that carries me to places in life that otherwise I may not get by working a job. That business ownership could be my lane. And I decided after I graduated college, I thought, well, I don't really want to be a lawn guy my whole life, but I do like the idea of business ownership. And I made a little business plan with what little I did learn in business school. And
Yeah.
I decided, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to prove to myself that I can do it. And I guess you could say I had maybe a chip on my shoulder. And I just worked really hard and built a really good team around me. And over a 15-year period of time, built one of the larger landscaping companies in the southeastern United States, getting it around 150 employees, over 10 million a year in revenue, and then it was acquired by a national company. So going from just me and a push mower to me and 90 trucks going out every day, I learned a lot about how to get a
Nine,
business going.
90 trucks?
Yeah,
That's
it
a
was
lot.
it was organized chaos every day running that company.
Well, so at what point there did you make this transition shift from it's me and maybe a few team members to seeing that you really could push this to being something quite different, where you went from the I don't really want to push a lawnmower forever to the I perceive that I can build something that is substantially bigger than a dude with a lawnmower?
Yeah, when you're starting a new business from scratch, you're doing three things at once, and you're to varying degrees. So the three kind of buckets, I guess you could say, would be you're working in the business.
Hmm.
For in my case, I was actually mowing the yards, and then the next thing you're doing is working on the business. You're developing processes, systems, routines. What's my marketing strategy? What's my quality assurance strategy? What's my customer service system? And then the third thing is you're working on yourself. You have to learn skills like management, leadership, basic accounting and economics and marketing and copywriting and all of these things. You have to like become pretty good at about 20 different things. And so in the early days, it was like Monday through Friday was in the business. Maybe Saturday was on the business. And then Sunday was on myself. And as time went on, I could like peel time away from the in the business part and dedicate more time to the on the business part and then on myself. And then once you're able to kind of flip that dynamic of 5 days a week on the business, then that's when you start to really see things start to work and you achieve kind of some velocity and then this thing starts kind of humming. The problem is it's really hard to make that shift. And most entrepreneurs, to your point, don't. And it's because actually it's easier just to burn yourself out and work 7 days a week in the business than it is to shift and to work on the business. That's where most entrepreneurs get hung up.
Why is it easier to work ourselves to death than to take a step back?
The easier thing to do is to just roll up your sleeves and do the work and do it yourself. It's a lot harder to sit down, break down what it is you're doing, break it down into a process, a repeatable process, and a standard like operating procedure that then you can delegate to somebody else. It's a lot harder to build a system that moves rocks than you just moving the rocks yourself. And so it's one of those things like in the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there's a chapter on what they call sharpening the saw. And I think it's
Yeah.
an Abraham Lincoln quote where he said, if I had 10 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend 9 hours sharpening my axe.
Yep.
And that's kind of how it is in business. It's a lot harder mentally to build the system than it is just to do the work yourself, and then kind of confuse yourself that you're making progress when in fact you're just spinning your wheels.
As recently as this morning, I was writing out the plans for the week for my other company, Lenders Online Training, that I just purchased from my mother. And one of the tasks that we're building at the sales team is to get this new Calendly set up with this new team level, so we can go have appointment setters and the sales guy and get the whole architecture built that never was needed when there was one person who was doing the appointment setting and the same person was doing the sales and the same person was doing the training.
Right.
We didn't need the extra
Yep.
stuff. And
Yep.
I opened up Calendly and I thought, man, it's not going to take me hardly any time to go buy this thing, go get the logins, go. And then I thought, do I have someone who could do this? Why, yes, I have Suzanne who handles tech stuff. So all I really need to do here is stifle my urge to do it myself. I need to write out as clearly as I can what I want done. And then I need to tag the appropriate people, and I need to press enter in Slack and just step back
Yep.
and let people who have talent, that's why I hired them,
Yep.
let them use their talent. But it's so hard. Why is it so hard for us? It was only going to take me 5 or 10 minutes, probably. Why is it so hard to step back and let someone else mow the grass?
The thing is it's hard to delegate something if you've never done it yourself. So it's
Yeah.
really difficult to get in there and teach somebody else how to do something if you've never done it. And in fact, if you do that, most of the time it doesn't work out. So step one, you kind of have to know how to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And then you have to do the work all over again, teaching somebody else how to do it. But if you invest that time, it can be kind of a force multiplier. These days, it's actually easier than it's ever been before because we have better tools. For
Yeah.
example, a tool I love is called Loom.com.
Yep.
And online screen recording and voice recording. You can even take a video of you. And you can literally just sit there and explain how we do something, why we do it this way, how long it should take, how we're going to grade quality, here's what we expect, and like an over-the-shoulder kind of way, and send that out 100 times. And what a great tool. That wasn't available 10 or 15
Yeah.
years ago, So now there's really no excuse. You can build systems and processes easier than ever.
My favorite technique is to do a loom of whatever the process is, explaining what you're doing while you're doing it. So it's a screen share plus me talking on video. Then send it to the team member who's going to do the job. Then have them write out a written procedure SOP for the thing.
Exactly.
And then I go and I review the SOP, and it becomes immediately clear, did I communicate something poorly, or did they not understand something, or both?
Exactly.
And then
That's an awesome way to do it. And what that does is it saves you the bean counting of making the SOP.
Yeah.
Let them kind of solidify that, and then you check to make sure that's what you want. I love
Yeah.
that approach.
It's I am so blessed to get to work with people who are talented and can just do that. Well, let me ask you this. I was going to say, and then I can trust to do this, which in Lenders Online Training, before I bought it, it was my mom and my sister-in-law were the key players and have been for a decade, right? So there's a lot of trust there. But then we started expanding out. We hired Jade, who's a dear friend of mine. I worked together a lot with her, but she's not blood. Okay. She's not marriage, like married into the family. How do you go about trusting people as you get beyond that circle of family and very close friends you start working with, and you start hiring people that you don't know them, you don't know their dog's name, they're foreigners to you, but you're inviting them into your family and trusting them with your livelihood. How do you make that trusting leap?
Yeah, that's something that I think every business owner is challenged by. Is how do you get good people on the bus, and how do you put them in positions where they can succeed? With building my current company, GreenPal, we've got 47 people, and most of them are remote. And what works for me is dating before we get married. And so what I mean by that is before I'll bring somebody on full time, I will try to work with them on a project type of arrangement first. I will try to set out little projects for them to do, and then see how they do, and then maybe after that for about 3 or 6 months, then I might bring them more on a part-time basis, and then full-time, and then even the full-time thing is we're going to try this for a month. I really try to ease my way into those types of relationships because because you really don't know until you get somebody in there. It really is
Yeah.
a leap of faith, and the last thing you want to do is get the wrong person on the bus, and then what happens is we get bogged down with a sunk cost fallacy, where
Yeah.
we don't want to prune the person out because we've already invested all this time training them, and
Yeah.
I have made that mistake so many times. So I find if I can ease my way in over like 6 months, a year before I bring somebody on full time, that works for us.
I love it. What I'm doing with my companies is if it's a new person who I don't know and maybe they're not as proficient in what I want them to do yet until I train them, I say, okay, let's do like 5 hours a week for a month.
Right?
And if they're well known to me, slash, they already know what I want them to do, I say, hey, let's go do like 5 or 10 hours a week for 3 months. And then
Exactly.
by the end of that, we're gonna really know like how responsive are they? How responsive do they expect me to be? Do they feel like they're getting good value? Like what I'm paying them is sufficient? And we just get to work all that out before we get anything more formal than that. And it's a great way to get to know somebody. And even people who maybe were friends before or colleagues in some fashion, now once they're working for me to understand, well, how does this relationship work? How does it feel? I say a lot of things just with the vibe and with clients too, with my COO clients who start off with a 3 month contract. Hey, 3 months, here's our overall objectives, but after 3 months, we'll have a really good idea of do we like each other or not? And then,
Exactly. And 10, 15 years ago, you didn't have that option. Nowadays, you do. 10, 15 years ago, you had to hire the person, take a leap of faith, and then it was a big unwinding to undo it. And nowadays, you
yeah,
don't have to do that. The other thing with the 3 to 5 hours a month deal can also work on the other side of the spectrum for those really, 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 really high end, expensive executive type roles that maybe your company is not big enough for yet. For instance,
yeah,
like let's say you need like a head of HR. Let's say you've got 10 or 20 employees, and you want to like be executing at a high level with respect to HR, but you can't afford a $200,000 a year HR person. Well, you can hire an HR person fractionally, and work with them
yep.
3 hours a month. Same thing with chief marketers, like or chief legal, So what a great time to be in business where you have these tools at your disposal where you can work with people fractionally. I love it.
Yeah, I have Jen Bro as my fractional CFO for both my companies, where mostly it's her team doing bookkeeping, but then occasionally she puts on her CFO hat, bills me a heck of a lot more, and goes in and gives an assessment, right? And then I have Wes Schaefer as my fractional VP of sales for Lenders Online Training, where
Awesome.
he's available a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. But I get this high octane, deeply experienced, and now I have someone that my sales guy can be coached by who is way more proficient than I am and
Right.
like a team meeting once a week for 15 minutes. And it's just amazing. So tell me this, back to your story, Brian. When you at what point did you know you were going to hit 10 million?
In the first business and the second business, it was a point where you could see that things were working, and you could see the early indications of duplication. And so, in the first business, I had a landscaping company, and I ran a crew every day, and then I would sell at night and sell on the weekend, and I would do all the other stuff, after hours. But it wasn't until I got my second and third crews that I could then do the math and say, okay, if I got 30 of these crews out there, then I know I can do multiple seven figures. Same thing with GreenPal, which is basically the Uber for lawn mowing. It
Yeah.
wasn't until we got our first 500 customers and we didn't know all of their names, and we didn't know everybody personally. It wasn't until then that I realized, yeah, now we can scale this thing. We can make this thing hit eight figures. GreenPal's doing 30 million a year in revenue, and it wasn't until you see the duplication working, and you're not having to hand crank every single thing, and also you're starting to be rewarded by delegating, and you're being rewarded by implementing systems and processes, and you're seeing that work. Then you can double down, do more of that, and then it's just a matter of scaling what's already working.
I love it. I'm thinking about with my company, Lenders Online Training, how that fits in there. As I'm thinking about what am I not paying attention to? What am I paying attention to? And in that case, the product is we're training credit analysts how to better analyze tax returns to determine who can take on bigger loans. So it's
Mm,
a very specific topic, and I'm not
yeah,
a banker. So I have my team that does the operations because I don't understand it, nor will I. Like my lead trainer has 10 years of lending experience. So
Yeah,
that's like I can't duplicate that. So I can't see inside the black box exactly. So I'm focused on sales and on hiring the team. I'm curious for you because you started off pushing a lawnmower. At what point did you get operations settled and then you focused on sales? Then you got sales settled, then you focused on team building? Or is it more like you kept on going back and forth as you got one better, one plate spinning perfectly, then you run back over here to operations to improve that. Then as soon as that goes well, you run back over to something else.
I think it's more the latter. I think it's as a
Yeah.
business owner, you it is a game of whack a mole, and you are having to almost triage uh, what the top priority is at that stage of the game. And so, at whatever level of the game you're at, it could be okay. Well, we have to reliably deliver this thing we are selling, or else we don't have a company. And so let me work on operations for a year, make sure I can predictably deliver what it is we're selling, and that 90% of people are happy that end up doing business with us and come back and do more business with us. Let's get that right. Now we got that right. Now let's develop a sales process, sales system, and let's spend a year or two on that. And guess what? Now we're scaling so much we can't keep up with it on the operations side. So now we got to go back to operations. So I think it's more whack a mole. And as you scale and get big, maybe you can do both at once. But as you, the founder, are driving a lot of this stuff, and you're getting your first million, 5 million, 8 million, 10 million in revenue, I think it's more triage, and I think it's bouncing back and forth, and that's how it's been for me with both companies that I've built. And it wasn't until running my first business that I realized that we weren't actually a landscaping company. We were a sales organization. And once
Mhm.
I made that key unlock and started to really just have the best sales process in my industry, in my market, did we really take off and get out of like that rut of like $2 million in revenue. And with GreenPal, I was able to kind of avoid that mistake. Day one, we started thinking about, okay, how are we going to get people to find out about this product? How are we going to get this product in the hands of people that need it? Let's start working on that day one. There's a saying that first time founders worry about product, and second time founders worry about distribution. And
Hmm.
so what that means is like the first time founder like obsesses over the product and thinks that that's going to be the ticket to success. Whereas the second time founder is like, yeah, no, that's table stakes. If we can't figure out a way to market this thing, we're done. So the second
Yeah.
time founder obsesses over sales and marketing and distribution.
I love it. I've been thinking about what is the single most important data point each week I can be tracking in the company I just bought, and I'm pretty sure that it is how many conversations my sales guy actually talks to a human on, not just
Oh, I like
voicemails
that.
left, but actual like that's the one thing. And I'm pretty sure that's like, and as you're saying, the whole company has to be a sales organization. That really of everything I'm doing on that company, I'm thinking about actually getting on the phone this week and acting as one of the appointment setters just to go get his calendar full, just to increase the one metric. Because if it is in fact the right metric to track, if I'm right on that, then there's nothing more important that I can do to go increase that number.
Yeah, I agree. And a couple things to think about there. Um, as you're tracking KPIs and as you're trying to drive the business forward, there's output metrics, which is most likely sales, new customers, revenue growth, whatever. And then
Mhm.
there's input metrics. There is how many outbounds did the sales guys do? How many conversations did they have? How many minutes did they spend on the phone? How many deals did they propose? How many deals did they close? How many deals did they lose? Those are the input metrics, and that's really the stuff you want to track and try to move. Because when we
Mhm.
focus on the output metric, it's kind of like, well, where do I even start? I don't know how to move this number. But if you focus on the input metrics, you can do things to move those numbers, and then the output metric kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, I was at the Keep convention here a few months ago talking to Trent Chapman of Fixer Funnel about where I'm at with the various businesses. And he said, hey, go read The Goal by Allahu Goldratt, which I'd read
Ooh,
before years ago, but I thought I remember it vaguely, but I'll go read it again. And Trent is very successful, owns a bunch of companies. I'll just listen to Trent here. And then I read that. And then recently, the One Thing book came up again, which
I
asks, what
like
is
that.
the one
Yes,
thing that'll make everything else easier or irrelevant? And I applied those two things and thought, I need to go simplify this relatively complex thing. Like Lenders Online Training has physical manuals, does in-person classes, online classes. The team is growing like crazy. We've over doubled in size since the start of the year. But I need to cut through the noise, right? Because I could be active and busy all day, but busyness is quite different from hitting seven figures, hitting eight figures. And
exactly.
let's wrap up this interview. That's my last question for you, Bryan, is how do you cut through the clutter of the million things that are grabbing your attention? How do you keep yourself centered each week on what is really important for your company?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And to reversing back to your last point where you threw out two great books, I think the working on yourself bucket never goes away. You're always setting out time to work on yourself, listening to podcasts, go to YouTube University, reading books, things like that. And a book that I like a lot that I try to read at least once every year or two is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. And in that book, he has a chapter on how do you focus on what matters, and how do you know if you're focusing on the right thing. And to
Hmm.
your question, a lot of times business owners will get dominated by the things that are urgent but not important. And
Yeah.
so these are all the things that just kind of like flood your email inbox, or phone calls ringing, or voicemails you got to return, or just a little mundane minutia that go into running a business. And they're urgent, but they're not necessarily important. What you want to do is set aside time in the other quadrant of things that are important but not urgent. And so these are the things that aren't necessarily like burning the house down today, but they're the things you have to spend time on to get to the next level of the game. And so those are things like what we talked about. You mentioned setting in on some appointment calls and doing some yourself, and seeing firsthand what that looks like. That's something that's in the bucket of important but not urgent. You don't have to do that tomorrow to keep your business running, but if you spend
Mhm.
time doing those sorts of things, you'll get all kinds of insights on how to improve the business. And
Yeah.
so that's something that I always try to like hold myself accountable to do, is like, okay, in this week or today, like, what percent of time did I spend in that bucket of things that are
Mm.
super important but aren't necessarily urgent? And if you spend more time there, the whole business grows and everything. Your life gets easier.
Sometimes I get to work an hour early and I spend that first hour and I just ask, okay, what do I not have to do?
Yeah,
And before everything
exactly.
else shows up that I must do, what can I do first I don't have to do? I just bought that book again. Thanks for the recommendation. Of course, I read it like everyone did, but when did I read it? 20 years ago? 10 years ago? I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm also waiting on a new quote from GreenPal for my current house because I realized I'd not logged in since my last house. And I was mowing my lawn in 85-degree temperatures at 9 a.m. On Sunday.
No, no,
And,
no. Time, life's too.
and
You got yes. You can better spend that time on your business.
one, it's curious because I think, well, it's a good workout and I like to be physically fit. So, of course, yard work is good for me. But then I think, well, if money wasn't an issue, would I just go to the gym instead and do really highly targeted stuff or
Yes.
be mountain climbing? And the answer is yes. So that's why I
Yes.
just turned GreenPal on again. Real quick, Bryan, can you tell us where to find GreenPal and then where to connect with you on social media?
Yeah. Anybody that doesn't want to waste time mowing your own yard and you want to spend more time on high leverage things, like building your business, just go to greenpal.com, pop your address in. Anybody wants to hit me up, Instagram's the best place to find me. Bryan M. Clayton. Just drop me a DM there.
Great. Bryan, thanks for being on Redbeard Radio.
Bryan, I appreciate it. I had a ball.